6%. About 7% of these errors will lead to permanent disability and death. This is a major cause of morbidity and mortality in hospitalized patients. Extensive literature research suggests a strong positive correlation between medication errors and interruptions. On average, a nurse is interrupted once every 9 minutes. So can you imagine how many times a nurse would be interrupted during a 12-hour shift? To put in perspective, it would be about 80 times. But nurses are most likely interrupted more than once every 9 minutes. Interruptions increase the risk of error by 60%. Interruptions have also been identified by nurses as one of the main contributors to medication errors. So how do interruptions affect nurses? Interruptions are the unplanned break when the primary task is being performed. A secondary task is the cause of the interruption, as this is not the primary task at hand. Interruptions during skill-based performance interfere with attention required for medication checks, which leads to slips and lapses, resulting in error. Interruptions also intrude with working memory, causing a lack of focus and evoking feelings of aggravation and stress.
Purpose. So the development of the safe medication zone is to decrease interruptions during medication preparation and administration, therefore decreasing the risk of medication error related to interruptions, to increase patient safety and their quality of care. So what is the safe medication zone? The safe medication zone was designed to provide a visual cue to everyone that nurses should not be interrupted while working within the zone. The implementation of the safe medication zone has successfully reduced 47% of the medication errors. How frequent do the interruptions occur? So Serena and I did an observational study to examine the context of interruptions to nurses' work on Jean Patterson Tower 8 and Tower 9 at the Vancouver General Hospital. We recorded the frequency and the causes of interruptions during medication rounds. Overall, a total of 280 interruptions were observed across 2 units. 64% of those occur between 7 a.m. to 9 a.m., whereas 36% of those occurred between 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. So what are interruptions? We categorize 4 general types of interruptions to facilitate our understanding to the factors that cause interruptions and to ensure the consistency, the reliability, and the accuracy of our data collection. So here are the types of interruptions. Discrepancies. There are the need to clarify doctor's order, to look up for missing medications, or to look up for medication data. Whereas intrusions, they contribute to about half due to the fellow colleagues asking questions or the need to answer patients' questions. The self-initiated interruptions is about 1/3 of the interruptions. They're from using their own cell phone, texting, or even asking questions themselves. Distractions, they're due to telephone calls or call bells. So, what are the causes of interruptions? From the data, we can see that not only we need to educate nurses about the effects of interruptions to the risk of medication error, we also need to raise the awareness of the others. Almost half of the interruptions came primarily from other nursing staff or other healthcare providers. They are the unit clerks, the physicians, the physiotherapists, the patient care aides, and etc. Followed by the individual nurse himself or herself, and the environment such as the call bells, the patients, the family members, or visitors. And for those of you who like seeing percentages, we have consolidated our data into this table. As you can see again, from the very last column, that almost half of the interruptions were intrusions caused by other nursing staff or healthcare providers, followed by a little less than 1/3 of the interruptions were self-initiated.
So Wiki and I wanted a written policy that would be available for the staff to consult to help maintain this new practice. Therefore, we tried to find a pre-existing guideline which we could adapt to by contacting different health authorities and even authors of the literatures that we looked at. Unfortunately, there wasn't any. So we developed a draft clinical guideline, which is still undergoing current revisions, with the help of and guidance of one of our T8, T9 agency project leaders, Annette Postman. So in order for this project to be successful, we have considered various design options for phase 1. These options were then being evaluated objectively using a weighted matrix, based on the criteria created by T8 and T9 stakeholders. A total of 8 criteria were created, and each of these were weighted as equally important. To name a few: cost, the acceptability by staff, the portability, ease of implementation. A score was given to evaluate how successful our recommendations have met each criteria. 0 being negative, 0.1 being neutral, 1 being positive. The higher the score is, the better the recommendations was based on the criteria. Now James and Gina will talk about using one of the proposed recommendations from the matrix.
Gino and I developed 2 miniature models, one for LED lights and for flags. Continuing off with the weighted matrix that Serena and Wiki made, we selected LED lights as one of the 2 proposals for the trials. As you can see in the bottom middle picture, the lights are installed in the medication cart. We also proposed putting lights on cupboards and the walls as well.
The second tool we proposed was a flag. Although this was not on the weighted matrix, we followed the selection criteria in the areas of cost, acceptability by staff, cleaning, and ease of implementation. Ultimately, we opted for the hanging flags that you can see in the picture on the left. After meeting with the agency project leaders, we decided we will use push-button LED lights and hanging flags to be installed on the cupboards above the medication carts. To educate the staff, we hosted a series of short in-services and promoted the tools by using one-page handouts. To reach the staff who could not be at the in-services, we uploaded the content to the unit's online education site known as OneSpot. Here you can see the PowerPoint presentation that was used for educating the students, and the formal teaching plan that we followed for our teaching sessions.
We use a theoretical framework for this trial, as we have gathered concepts from Serena and Wiki's observational study. An example of this concept would be different types of interruptions, as Wiki described. This trial combined both quantitative and qualitative data collection. It is quantitative as it measures the amount of interruptions that occur during medication preparation. Quantitative data is collected in 2 forms, through constructed data sheets. Actually, back to the previous slide, sorry. Yes? Yeah, okay. So quantitative data sheets is collected in 2 forms, through constructed data sheets and from our research assistants, Tina McVeigh and Natasha Sharma. So the one at the bottom right would be our actual data sheet, and that's how we installed it throughout the trial. Go ahead. Following the trial, we will also collect qualitative data through surveys and interviews. This data will provide us with lived experiences of the nurses who used the tools. The independent and dependent variables are very similar between the 2 trials. In both trials, the dependent variable is the amount and type of interruptions that occur. The independent variable that we manipulated in the tool are either flags or the LED lights. The picture in the bottom there is actually the push-button lights that we've developed. Okay.
The combined length of these trials is expected to be 5 weeks. The design is both longitudinal and cross-sectional in nature. The longitudinal aspect is present when we collect data from week 0 and week 5, during which no intervention is being used in these weeks. The cross-sectional aspect is present since data collected once during the weeks that the flags or lights were trialed.
We we identified a few limitations in our trials. The first one are nurses' resistance to change. This was evident when it was reported that nurses were not using tools during the medication preparation. The extraneous variables were difficult to account for, such as nurses who prepare medications at the nursing station or computer desk rather than at the medication zones that we've developed.
There were insufficient teaching sessions held that could reach all staff, as not all staff members could be present at the in-services. This led to some staff not being aware of the tools that were being used. Additionally, we conducted these trials under a very narrow time frame and were only able to trial each intervention for 1 week.
These trials have a few implications for nursing practice and for future studies. The quantitative data provides us with a measure of the effectiveness of the trial tools. The qualitative data provides us with the information for the components of change sustainability that we can address. An example of this would be tools needing model modification for future trial or implementation. Like, for example, from the previous slides that we've shown the designs, an example of it would be the sensor-activated lights and lever-operated flags.
There is also a need for analysis of the medication error records that occurred during the trial duration. This is to determine whether or not the interventions reduce medication errors. Trials also need replication over a longer period of time.
Okay, so there is also a need for a quasi-experimental design in which the population would be nurses in the hospital unit, and the comparison of intervention would be using one tool or no tool at all. The need to sustain change, the change initiative should be addressed as well. So we need to create champions who can lead the change initiative, expand awareness and education campaign to longer periods of time while making sure that all nurses in the unit have been approached. Project leaders' involvement is also a key element for this project. The project should also allow for opportunities for nurses to be involved in the decision-making process.
Before we conclude this presentation, I wanted to share an update on the status of the project. Currently, the second phase of the project is in its trialing stage. At this time, the flags are in their third day of trialing on T9. As you can see, we successfully replicated our proposal models and were able to hang flags near the medication cars to create a safe medication zone.
To conclude this presentation, this trial is a quality improvement project and involves many phases. So far, phase 1 is complete, and phase 2 is in the process of completion. The next phase of this project will involve replicating the trial specific to the effective tool which would be successful in our trial into another unit at VGH. That would be our references for our presentation.